You are listening to 93.9 Dublin South FM.
Broadcasting from the Dundrum Town Centre, this is Dublin South FM.
So here we go. Sharad, you take it away. You have research clip that you have put together as a feature called The India's Real Enemy.
Thank you, Mr. Zaidi. Good to be with you again, discussing enemies of India. So, dear listeners, today we are talking about another critical issue that has deep implications for India's future. I consider it as a threat, an enemy of India, and that is Agniveer scheme. We all know what Agniveer scheme is, and by introducing this scheme, the government has threatened to undermine the fundamental principles that have long underpinned the strength and dedication of the Indian Armed Forces. So in reviewing the Agniveer scheme, I have identified three fundamentals that make a strong army. So the first is attraction to service. The second is enlisting the strongest. And the third is retaining the best. We will go through each of them. So the Indian Army has historically attracted the best youth by inspiring them with values of valor, pride, services, and respect. Serving in the army is seen as a passionate commitment to the nation, bringing not only honor to the nation, community, and family, but also a pride in self. On the side note, there are also benefits and long-term social security for soldiers and their families. In case a soldier is martyred, it becomes the special and the privileged legacy and pride for generations to come. However, the Agniveer scheme, which limits the tenure of soldiers to just 4 years, disrupt these foundational elements. So talking about the first one, the attraction, one of the cornerstones of a strong army is its ability to attract dedicated and enthusiastic youths. So Agniveer requires youth aged 17 to 21, and they have to undergo a training of just 6 to 8 months before being posted in active service. The government has started this scheme in 2023, and around 46,000 recruits have been inducted under this scheme. The most controversial part of the scheme is the uncertainty and the lack of assured benefits, such as full-term soldiers' benefit and the state honor in case of martyrdom. This actually diminishes the motivation for joining the armed forces. The promise of a lump sum payment at the end of the tenure and not a guarantee but a promise of re-recruiting the Agniveer candidates in government services after 4 years is insufficient, and it is not attracting the best candidates. So the Agniveer scheme severely compromises by introducing uncertainty into soldiers' passion to serve and discredits his future. So the sheen of the army forces gets lost here. The second fundamental of a strong army is the rigorous enlisting and training of soldiers. So the Agniveer scheme attempts to run the army like a corporate entity, offering short-term contractual service rather than a long-term commitment. So this corporate approach is ill-suited for the Indian armed forces, and it requires unwavering dedication and long-term investment in training. Hence, the quality of applicants are likely to decline as a result. I refer to a ground report by The Wire magazine, and it indicates that before Agniveer scheme, in the village of Gemar in Ghazipur district of Uttar Pradesh, around 2,000 aspirants were training to join the armed forces. Once the scheme was declared, the numbers plummeted to around 20, and this itself highlights the scheme's failure to attract committed candidates. And this decline also creates a dangerous cycle of recruiting lower quality candidates whose dedication is questionable because they lack clarity of future. From the from the armed forces management point of view, they would be reluctant to invest in sophisticated training in arms and ammunitions and equipments on these short-term soldiers. So this awareness, this hesitancy can erode the rich traditions and the effectiveness of Indian armed forces. The third fundamental is about retaining the strongest, the best talent. Retention, as we know, is driven by motivation and inspiration to serve the nation, potentially making the ultimate sacrifice. What Agniveer scheme does is it shifts the focus from national service to monetary compensation, and that further undermines the commitment of soldiers. So let's understand this. The short-term nature of the scheme means that out of 4 years, suppose 6 to 8 months are spent on training. So that leaves about 3.5 years of active service. By the end of the tenure, as it approaches, the recruits are likely to serve with diminished motivation. So last 6 months, it's going to be nice and easy. Thus, the effective period of active service, even though if it is with full commitment, it's reduced to around just 3 years. This short duration hampers the development of a deeply committed and well-trained military force, because the transient nature of these Agniveer recruits mean that the long-term dedication for a robust armed forces is severely compromised. So if you see the overall picture, in short term, the Agniveer scheme fails to attract the best youth. Instead, many young people are turning to the state services for more stable employment. And this will have serious implications for the quality and the readiness of the Indian armed forces. In the long term, there will be more concerning potential outcomes. So I want to draw parallels from the experience of the British youth who were trained, who traveled to Syria to join the ISIS. And then they were fighting back the army of their own country. Hence, there is a risk that Agniveer trained individuals might be recruited by groups with hostile intentions. These battle-trained individuals could pose a significant threat, potentially being used against India. On a big picture, by implementing the Agniveer scheme, the Modi government has disrupted the fabric of enlisting soldiers. The scheme has introduced a sort of class divide within the armed forces. So there is a short-term soldier, a long-term soldier, a soldier with benefits, a soldier without benefit, a soldier who would be Shaheed, or the soldiers who would be the other one. So it's replacing the respected rank-based hierarchy with a division-based tenure. And this will definitely weaken the cohesion and effectiveness of the armed forces. Moreover, the Indian context is vastly different from the countries like Israel. I'm using Israel because that's where the short-term and the contractual nature of the soldiers take place. So looks like it's a copy-paste of that policy in India. So the partial conscription model, it might be effective in Israel, but India faces unique challenges with vast borders to defend, 1 million miles, against enemies like nuclear-armed Pakistan and China. And the terrain and the strategic requirements demand committed and highly motivated manpower. This Agniveer will fail to provide. As I see it, the scheme has downgraded the status of a soldier who were once willing to be Shaheed. The youth, once ready to dedicate their prime years to serving the country, are now disenchanted and they lack passion to join the armed forces. To top it up, the government has not provided a definitive and assured career path for this youth after their 4 years of term. In short, all the three fundamentals of a strong army has been decimated with this Agniveer scheme. I am yet to come across an article, editorial, review, or even a comment from ex-servicemen who is in favor of this scheme. All of them view this scheme as a short-term and a long-term threat to India's security. As the saying goes, so the wisdom, never touch the decorated army with the dirty hands of politics. But then the Indian government has done that. Therefore, friends, the real enemy of India today is not external, but this Agniveer scheme, which threatens the aspirations and the sacrifices of our soldiers. Hence, we must return to the principles, to the fundamentals that have long made the Indian Armed Forces a source of national pride and security. Dear friends, thank you for your time and attention. Please continue with your feedbacks. See you again next week with one more enemy of India. Bye for now.
Dublin South FM.
You wouldn't buy a car without knowing its history. So why would you buy a story without knowing who's telling it? Come here and I tell you. It's not always easy to verify what you see, read, or hear. But now there's help. Visit www.bemediasmart.ie. Stop, think, check. Be Media Smart. Brought to you by Media Literacy Ireland, supported by RTE.
93.9 Dublin South FM.